Welcome to the Develop Great Managers podcast, where you can learn directly from the experts. I'm Dale Ferrario, your host. For more information and valuable insights, go to developgreatmanagers.com. Now, on to the show. Hi, and welcome back to the Develop Great Managers podcast. I'm sorry that it's taken me a little while to get back to this next podcast. I ended up having to spend some time with my mom. She had some medical issues, and I ended up spending about 6 days kind of helping her through that. Things are better now, so I'm able to focus again on my podcasts. So before I jump into today's podcast, I have a couple of exciting things that I want to talk to you about. The first one is I'm writing a post for my blog. I haven't written a post in quite a while. Posts take quite a bit of time. And between doing a post and doing a podcast, I've been spending my time interviewing people and focusing on podcasts. But I ended up, after spending so much time in the hospital, having to come home and spend time writing a post. And that post is based on my learnings in spending the last 6 days in and out of various aspects of a hospital. And what I learned is hospitals and customer support are very similar. The overlaps are kind of amazing. So I spent some time talking about just that, what I learned from my experience in the hospital and how you can apply that learning to do a better job of providing customer support. So if you're a manager and your team does anything related to customer support, I think you'll enjoy my latest blog post. Second thing I want to talk about is I've decided what my next series of podcasts will be about. They're going to be about office politics. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking to different people about politics. Politics exists. Most everybody says they would like there to be less politics, but that isn't going to change. Politics are going to be there. Some companies have good politics. Some companies have bad politics. If you're at a company that has bad politics, I would seriously be thinking about finding another place to work. But if you're in a company where there's the normal amount of politics, it just exists. What you have to figure out is how to be successful, how to manage a team, and how to deliver value back to the company. I'll probably cover it over 2, 3, or maybe 4 different podcasts. So I hope you'll tune in and listen to it. I think it will be fun. The last thing I want to talk about is this is a completely different way for me to record a podcast. I'm doing it in front of a webcam so that I can be a part of a video that I put together and I post on YouTube. I also want to make sure that the same good podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and so on. But I've been toying with putting it out on YouTube, and I think this will make it more interesting. What you're going to see are the slides that I've created as the background and me in the corner talking to you. So I'm giving it a try. It's all new to me, and I hope it works out okay. So now let's get on with the podcast. I want to talk more about goals, and this week I want to talk about how to operationalize them. So let's jump into it. Before I do that, though, I still need to do my disclaimer. I am going to use copyrighted material. I actually think that's totally okay because it fits within the definition of fair use for 3 reasons. The first reason is I'm using it for teaching purposes. There is no commercial purpose for what I'm doing here. Second, I'm only using a subset of the complete work, just part of that work. And the third, there will be no material impact on the value of the work by me using a portion of it. So if you want more information, take a look at the slide or go onto the website and click on those links, and you can read more about fair use. So now on to the topic. And as I've done in the last couple of podcasts, I want to start this off with a quote. This week, I actually have 2 quotes. The first one is, when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. And that's by Confucius. The second one for this week, our goals can only be reached through a vehicle of a plan in which we must fervently believe and upon which we must vigorously act. There is no other route to success. and that one is attributed to Pablo Picasso. And I think both of those are phenomenal. They're all about operationalizing your goals. So let's get into a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to go back through the main points from the last two podcasts. Then I'm going to jump into the new material today. I'm going to talk about how to develop a plan. I'm going to talk about assigning an owner. I'm going to talk about measuring and reporting. I'm going to talk about reviewing and adjusting. And then I'm going to talk about finalizing your results. So let's go back, and as a refresher, let me talk about how I was going to break the topic of goals down. Breaking it down into 4 separate pieces. The first one is about why do goals. The second one, how do you define them? Third, and the one that I'm covering today, success comes with operationalizing those goals. And then the fourth will be about time to reward, rewarding people for their accomplishments. The first one was about why do goals. And I hit on 5 very important reasons why you should do your goals. The first one is goals help to provide clarity. Second, goals help you to stay focused. Third, goals give you motivation. Fourth, goals allow you to measure progress. And then fifth, goals hold you accountable. In the second podcast, I talked about how to define your goals. And I really talked about 6 important aspects in defining your goals. The first one is make sure that your goals are motivating. Second, link your goals back to the business or to your vision. Third, make sure that you engage others in the creation of those goals. Fourth, make sure that your goals are smart. Fifth, write them down. And sixth, make sure that you make those goals visible. So that's what I covered in the first 2 podcasts. Now, onto the content for today. And the first part of that is developing a plan. And there really isn't anything more important than developing a plan. This plan is going to make sure that you know how you're going to achieve your goal. That plan can be simple, or that plan can be complex. Its complexity really needs to be consistent with the complexity of the goal itself. The key components of the plan are going to include a list of actions, tasks, or activities that you're going to need to accomplish, or your team is going to need to accomplish in order to achieve that goal. The next thing is a timeline. When are those tasks, activities, and actions going to take place? And then third, what are the resources required in order to execute on that plan? I want to talk about a couple of plan examples just to cement the idea in your head. And what I said earlier is the complexity of the plan ought to match the complexity of the task. And I think these examples will help with that. So the first one I want to talk about is if you have a goal, for example, to complete a marathon this year, how are you going to get that done? Well, very likely you're going to have to think about the training schedule that you're going to be on. How many runs are you going to do? What kind of events are you going to participate in leading up to actually accomplishing your goal or running that marathon? You need to take that list of activities or that list of events and build it into a timeline or a calendar. And that timeline or calendar ought to lead you right up to the actual event. And then you might be thinking about what resources do I need? What friends are going to run with me when I do my training runs? Who's going to help me to stay motivated? Who's going to help me to run the distances I need to run in preparing to complete that marathon? So that's the example for completing a marathon. Now here's an example of a goal that you might have at work. You might need to increase your sales by 10% in the first quarter. A couple of examples of activities to achieve this goal might include implementing a spiff or running marketing campaigns. Whenever you plan to do whatever those activities are, you need to build a plan. And in this case, the resources that you need may not all be in your organization. You may have to reach out to other organizations, get those resources assigned in order to complete your plan to ultimately achieve your goal. The last goal I want to talk about is releasing a new product in the first half of the year. This goal is likely to be really large. The plan may focus on a whole team or a whole organization The plan will have tasks, milestones, resources, criteria to measure your progress, criteria to know when the product is ready to ship, and so on. So this is a very large project. It's a large plan, and it fits with the complexity of the goal. So I really hope that those examples help you to understand what it takes to build a plan to achieve your goal. Now let's move on to assigning an owner. Sometimes a goal is going to be fairly simple and straightforward. It might just be your own personal goal or one of your goals for home. You are going to be the owner. This section is really more about a goal that's focused on work, a goal where there might be multiple potential owners of that goal. So as a manager, it's incredibly important to pick that right owner because that owner will be responsible and accountable for delivering on that goal. Let me talk about some of the criteria for picking the right owner. The first one is around alignment. You should be looking at a person whose role and responsibility aligns well with the goal. The second one is ability. You want to pick somebody who can be successful as the owner, somebody that you can trust and depend on to deliver on that goal. And the third one is interest. You want to find someone who is not only aligned and able, but they're excited about the goal. If they're excited, there's a high likelihood that they're going to spend as much time as it takes to deliver on that goal. So that's a little bit about criteria. The next one is about measure and report. You need to spend some time thinking about the best way to track progress against your goals. There are a number of considerations. The first one is, how often will progress be made against that goal? Some goals, progress will be made infrequently. Other goals, progress will be made on a day-to-day basis. You just need to take that into account in determining how often you're going to measure and report that progress. The second and third items I want to talk about are connected. How hard is it to collect the data, and how accurate does the data need to be? If it's hard to collect, and it's important that the data be accurate, you may only be able to collect the data a couple of times between starting that goal and needing to deliver on it. So you've got to think carefully about that and how you're going to present the results. The next one is, how will progress against that goal, or in some cases lack of progress, impact motivation, whether that's personal motivation or motivation of the team? If, for example, a lot of work will go into a goal before you start to see progress against that goal, then it doesn't make sense to measure that goal early. The results of that goal will continue to show that you're making no progress. If that's what's planned, why measure and why share the results? It's only likely that people are going to look at that and say, oh no, are we in trouble? And that shouldn't be the case. So think carefully about how progress or lack of progress will impact motivation. The next one is, think hard about exactly what data needs to be collected. Sometimes you need more data, especially if you might need to make an adjustment along the way. If you start to see that you're a bit off track and you've been collecting the right data, it will be easier for you then to make the adjustment and continue on. If you have not been collecting the right data, you're going to have to stop. You're going to have to go back and collect data before you can do any replanning or adjustments and before you can move on. So think hard about exactly what data you should be collecting. And then the last one is, think hard about how to visualize that data. I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. So turning your data into a picture where you and or your team can immediately recognize how you're doing without having to dig in and understand all the aspects of the way it's presented, I think it can be incredibly important. So I created a slide that just gives you a sense for different ways to visualize data. You can visualize data as a pie chart. You can visualize it as a bar graph. You can visualize it as one big number. But whatever you do, make sure that the way that you're conveying that data quickly connects with anyone who needs to be looking at it. If it's your team and they can look at progress, they can immediately know, are we on track? Are we doing the right things? Or do we need to rethink our approach? I decided to include in my slides an example of one of my goals for last year and the way that I tracked and presented the data. My goal last year was 500 subscribers. So I defined subscribers pretty broadly. And as you can see from this graphic, it could be signing up from one of my pages. It could be signing up on my website. It could be subscribing to iTunes. All of those were different ways for me to get subscribers. Now, I collected that information and reported out to myself on a monthly basis how I was doing against my goal. If I ever fell behind, I had enough information to know where I was on track and where I was not, or which channel, which different method I might be able to spend time on to drive more subscribers to allow me to achieve my goal. So as you can see from my numbers, most of my subscribers came from Facebook. That's because I hired a marketing organization to help share what I was doing on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram. And I really caught on Facebook, and it allowed me to achieve my goal. The other place that you can see that I was successful is on my own website, developgreatmanagers.com. I was using the same advertising agency at times to push for customers to come to my website to get a free ebook. So anyway, this gives you an example of a way that you can track progress against your goal. You can measure and report out how you're doing. Now that you have a plan and you're reporting out your progress, you need to review and make adjustments along the way. I just talked a little bit about the kind of adjustments I made, but what's important is make sure that you're reviewing your goals on a regular basis. When you review those goals, make sure that the discussion is factual. It's not about opinions, it's about how are we doing against the goal. What have we done? Are we on track or not? It's good practice to use red, yellow, green, and even blue to note status across your many goals. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. When goals are off track, don't panic. Agree to the action and then move on. Maybe most importantly, avoid the desire to modify your goals. Modify your plan, make the adjustments necessary, and then execute. So let me talk a little bit more about red, yellow, green, and blue. I have had so many teams that never wanted to show a goal as red. Red means you're off track and you need to replan. Just be honest. If you're off track and you need to do a new plan, mark the goal red. Then you need to do the work to put that new plan in place, start to execute, and get yourself off red. Yellow means we're at risk, we have a plan in place, and we're working that plan to get us back on track. And green means you're on track. I like to use blue as a way to mark a goal as complete. When the goal is complete, mark it blue. You don't need to spend more time continuing to review the progress, make adjustments, and so on. That goal is done. Now, I've had so many teams that want to show a goal as orange. It's not really yellow, it's beyond yellow, but they don't want to show it as red. They want to make up a new color, they want to call it orange. In my opinion, there is no orange. Red, yellow, and green are sufficient to track your progress against goals, and you can use blue if you want to say you're done, but there is no orange. Last piece now is finalizing the results. You've done all the work all year. You've been working constantly to track your goals, report how you're doing, make adjustments along the way. You've done everything you can to achieve your goals. Now you just need to report it out. You need to act like an independent accounting firm. I like to think of the Oscars. Who is it that's the independent accounting firm that audits the results of the Oscars? They come up with that little briefcase and they say, here's the final results. You need to act that way. You need to use data and you need to determine whether you achieve the goal or not. Sometimes you're going to have a goal that allows you to overachieve. That's great. Report out how you did. That's really the last step in finalizing the results. You will, of course, do more work to review how you did, what you could have done differently. You'll do retrospectives, deep dives, and you'll use all of that data to improve your processes. You'll probably also use that data to help you think about the goals next time. But just be clear, finalize your results, publish those, let everybody know how you did, and then move on to the next year or move on to the next period. Now, as always, I want to talk about an action that you can take based on this podcast. There's a lot that I talked about today. Clearly, the most important piece is putting that plan in place. Obviously, the next most important piece is going to be monitoring your progress and making changes along the way. I suspect that you know how to do that plan. And I think that my explanation will help you to think about how you're going to report out and make corrections along the way. But there is something that you can do right now. It's still early in the year, and it's likely that you're going to have to make some adjustments along the way. So just spend a little bit of time now. Take a look at your goals. Look at the ones that you think are at most risk, and spend a little bit of time thinking about what are the options or alternate plans for each of those. Keep those in the back of your mind. It will probably help you to make sure that you're collecting the right information as you're doing your reporting for those goals, so that if they turn out to be off track, you have the information to move forward with one of those options that you thought about or one of those alternate plans. So that's the action for the week. I hope all of this was helpful. Next week, we're going to talk about rewards. We're going to talk about, now that you've completed your goals, you've reported it out, how are we going to reward our team? How are we going to talk about what went well and what could have gone better? But most important, let's celebrate our victories. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, there are more podcasts available on developgreatmanagers.com, on iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have time, please post a comment, or better yet, please write a review. Talk to you in the next podcast.